Chief Observer Clax 427 suppressed a shudder as he watched the humans through his quantum surveillance feed. His three stomachs churned in synchronized disgust as another bottle of fermented grape juice was uncorked at Table 7 of Le Chateau, one of Earth's supposedly finest dining establishments. "By the great nebula," he muttered, his crystalline skin flickering with revulsion patterns. "They're doing it again." Junior Observer Nix 189 glanced up from her datapad, her orbital sensors rotating with curiosity. "What are they doing now, Chief?" They're purposefully drinking poison and paying credits for the privilege." Clax's voice modulator crackled with disbelief. "Look at them swirling it around in those little transparent containers, sniffing it like they're conducting some primitive ritual." The surveillance pod, disguised as an ordinary Earth satellite, continued its geosynchronous orbit above Paris. Inside, the two Vexarian observers maintained their watch, their crystalline bodies refracting the soft blue light of their monitoring equipment. "Did you know," Nix chimed in, her voice dripping with the Vexarian equivalent of sarcasm, which sounded like someone gargling with wind chimes, "that they even have specialists whose entire purpose is to taste and rate these poisons?" "Sommeliers," Clax spat the word like it was a computational error. "We've been studying humans for 3 Earth cycles now, and I still can't comprehend their obsession with this wine." On the screen, a human at Table 12 was now holding their glass up to the light, making appreciative noises about something called legs. Clax made a note in his report about possible human hallucinations involving appendages in beverages. "Chief," Nix's voice took on a more serious tone, her crystalline structure shifting to a more formal configuration. "I've been analyzing the chemical composition of these beverages. The ethanol content alone should be enough to classify them as Class 3 neurotoxins by galactic standard." Clax's sensory appendages perked up. "Go on." "Well," Nix continued, her data crystals pulsing with excitement, "according to the Galactic Peace Accords of Sector 7, Subsection 12, Paragraph 459, we have a duty to protect less advanced species from self-harm," Clax finished, his entire form brightening with revelation. "Nix, you brilliant young crystal, you've just given me an idea." He turned his attention back to the restaurant scene, where a human was now performing something called a toast, lifting their poison containers in some sort of ritualistic group acknowledgement. "Get me a direct line to the High Council," Clax ordered, his voice now humming with purpose. "I believe we've just found our solution to the human problem. And the best part," his crystalline structure sparkled with amusement, "they're going to thank us for it." As Nix established the connection, Clax watched another human order something called a vintage Bordeaux. These poor, primitive creatures. Soon they would be saved from their own destructive habits, whether they wanted to be or not. Little did Clax know that his plan was about to uncork a whole new understanding of human resilience and teach the Vexarians a lesson about making assumptions about species they barely understood. The grand chamber of the Vexarian High Council sparkled like a disco ball having an existential crisis. Hundreds of crystalline beings sat in their hovering pods, their bodies reflecting and refracting light in a dazzling display that would have given a human epilepsy warnings. "Order! Order in the chamber!" High Councillor Prism 001 vibrated at a frequency that made everyone's crystals hum uncomfortably. "Chief Observer Clax 427, you have our attention. This had better be worth interrupting our scheduled discussion about proper light refraction during formal ceremonies." Clax floated to the center of the chamber, his presentation crystals already beginning to glow. "Esteemed members of the High Council, I come before you with disturbing news about the humans." A collective murmur rippled through the chamber, causing a brief rainbow effect on the ceiling. "These primitive beings," Clax continued, projecting images from Earth, "are systematically poisoning themselves for pleasure. They call it wine tasting." He pronounced it like it was a particularly offensive mathematical error. "Preposterous," shouted one council member. "No species could be that foolish." "Oh, but it gets worse," Clax said, his voice modulator dripping with concern. "They have entire buildings dedicated to storing these toxins. They call them wine cellars, though our linguistics team is still debating if this has any connection to biological cells." High Councillor Prism 001 shifted uncomfortably in their hovering pod. "And you believe this presents a clear danger to their species?" "Perhaps Dr. Zixix can better explain the scientific implications," Clax suggested. backing away from the center. Dr. Zixix, the lead xenobiologist, floated forward. Her crystalline structure was arranged in the latest academic fashion, all right angles and precisely calculated light dispersions. She cleared her harmonic resonator with a sound like wind chimes in a blender. According to our research, she began projecting complex molecular structures into the air. Humans are willingly consuming a substance that would qualify as industrial solvent on most civilized worlds. They even rate these poisons on a numerical scale and argue about which ones are superior. Do they not have warning systems? Another council member asked. Surely their bodies must reject these toxins. That's the most disturbing part, Dr. Zixix continued. They've developed tolerance. Some humans can consume multiple units of wine without immediate system failure. They call this concerning ability holding their liquor, though we've yet to determine what this liquid imprisonment ritual entails. She brought up more data streams. They even have different types of these poisons, red, white, rose, though this appears unrelated to the flower of the same name. Our preliminary studies suggest they pair these toxins with different forms of sustenance, following some arcane system of rules that varies by region and social class. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter, creating a light show that would have put the aurora borealis to shame. I have a solution, Clax announced, floating forward again. We can save them from themselves. Our chemical engineers have developed a compound that will make their wine completely unpalatable. Once introduced, it will trigger their natural survival instincts, forcing them to abandon this destructive habit. And you're certain this will work? Prism 001 asked. Dr. Zixix nodded, her structure creating a prismatic cascade. The compound is based on substances humans universally avoid. We've even included elements of what they call cheap wine, apparently a lower grade of poison that their more discriminating members of society shun. Very well, Prism 001 declared. Operation Wine Liberation is hereby approved. May the great Nebula forgive us for not acting sooner to save these poor creatures from their bizarre addiction to fancy poison. As the council members dispersed, Dr. Zixix turned to Clax. Should we perhaps run more tests on human biology before proceeding? Nonsense, Clax declared. What could possibly go wrong? After all, we're dealing with a species that thinks fermented grape juice is a luxury item. How complicated could their physiology be? The sound of crystalline laughter echoed through the chamber, soon to be followed by the distinct taste of hubris, which coincidentally paired quite well with a nice Cabernet Sauvignon. Operation Wine Liberation kicked off on a quiet Tuesday night in the Bordeaux region of France. The Vexarian strike team, consisting of 5 of their most skilled operatives, hovered above the sprawling vineyards in their cloaked ship, looking like a bunch of disco balls trying to be sneaky. Team check-in, Commander Prax 775 ordered, his crystalline structure gleaming with self-importance. Sound off by designation. Infiltration Specialist Lux 299 ready to sparkle and strike. Chemical Expert Helix 443, compound stable and ready for deployment. Analysis Officer Quartz 621 monitoring systems engaged. Security Officer Rex 888 perimeter secure, though I must note these Earth cows keep staring at our position despite our cloaking technology. Commander Prax ignored the concerning observation about the cows' apparent ability to detect their presence. Tonight, we make history. Tonight, we save humanity from their primitive poison appreciation rituals. The ship descended near one of the largest wine storage facilities in the region. According to their intelligence, this facility supplied wine to distributors across the globe, the perfect target for their plan. Helix 443 pulled up the holographic schematics of their specially designed compound. Remember, the formula has been calibrated to be completely unpalatable to human taste buds. One drop will make their precious wines taste like what they call gas station sushi left in a hot car. What's a gas station? Lux 299 asked. Not important to the mission, Prax cut in. Begin deployment sequence under. The team floated down from their ship, their crystalline bodies twinkling in the moonlight. They looked like a chandelier had decided to go on a covert ops mission. Lux, disable their security systems, Prax ordered. Lux approached the control panel and interfaced with it using their advanced tech. Humans still use something called Windows 95 here. I almost feel bad about hacking it. Almost. Inside the facility, row upon row of wine barrels stretched into the darkness. The team moved silently between them, their bodies occasionally catching the light and sending little rainbow reflections dancing across the walls. "Begin dispersal of the compound," Prax commanded. "Remember, we need to hit every vintage." Helix 443 started the process, their specialized equipment releasing a fine mist that settled into each barrel. "The compound is binding perfectly with the liquid. Soon humans will never want to drink wine again." That's when the first sign of trouble appeared. "Commander," Quartz 621 called out, their voice modulator crackling with concern. "I'm picking up some anomalous readings from the compound interaction." "Explain," Prax demanded. "Well, sir, according to these readings, the compound is being broken down. That can't be right." Quartz tapped their monitoring crystal in confusion. "The wine appears to be adapting to it." "Impossible," Helix protested. "This compound was designed to be completely resistant to their primitive fermentation process." Suddenly, Rex 888's voice crackled over their comm system. "Commander, we have movement outside. A human vehicle is approaching. They appear to be delivering more wine." At this hour, Prax's crystals flickered with anxiety. "Quick, finish the dispersal. We can't let this shipment go untreated." The team rushed to complete their mission, their previously elegant movements now more resembling a panic-stricken disco party. In their haste, Lux 299 bumped into a barrel, causing a small splash of treated wine to land on their crystalline surface. "Oh no," Lux muttered, trying to clean it off. That's actually not bad, it's kind of pleasant." "What do you mean pleasant?" Prax demanded. "It's supposed to be utterly repulsive." "Sir," Quartz interrupted again, their voice even more worried. "According to these new readings, the compound isn't making the wine unpalatable. It's actually enhancing certain flavor notes and adding a unique crystalline finish." "Abort," Prax suddenly ordered, his entire structure flickering with panic. "Abort mission. Return to the ship immediately." As the team made their hasty retreat, they could hear the human delivery drivers entering the facility. "Hey, Jacques, does something seem different about the place?" "Now that you mention it, Pierre, it does look a bit sparkly." Back in their ship, the Vexarian team sat in stunned silence, their crystalline bodies dimmed with embarrassment. "So," Lux finally spoke up, still subtly licking their crystal surface where the wine had splashed, "should we tell High Command that we may have accidentally created a new premium wine additive instead of making it undrinkable?" Prax's only response was a sound resembling a wind chime having an existential crisis. In the facility below, the first treated bottles were already being loaded for distribution, their contents sparkling with an unusual but entirely appealing crystalline sheen. Somewhere in the universe, the cosmic entity in charge of irony was having a really good laugh. 3 weeks after Operation Wine Liberation, the Vexarian Observation Center had devolved into what humans would call a 5-alarm dumpster fire of panic. Chief Observer Clax 427 stared at the incoming reports with all his sensory crystals, hoping that if he looked at them from enough angles, they'd somehow say something different. "This is impossible," he muttered, his crystalline structure flickering like a malfunctioning disco ball. "Pull up the live feed from Le Chateau again." The quantum surveillance screen sparked to life, showing the same restaurant where their mission had begun. Only now, it was even more packed than before. "They're drinking more of it," High Counselor Prism 001's voice crackled through the emergency communication channel. Their usually perfectly aligned crystal structure was noticeably askew with stress. How are they still alive? On screen, a sommelier was presenting a bottle to an eager table of diners. "And here we have the new 2024 Chateau Margaux," they could hear him say. "You'll notice it has an unusual crystalline quality that's become quite popular. Wine enthusiasts are calling it the Aurora Vintage." Dr. Zixix, who had been running continuous analyses, made a sound like a crystal xylophone falling downstairs. "The humans have started posting about it on something called Instagram. They're calling it fairy wine and diamond juice. Some influencer named Chad just chugged an entire bottle while doing something called a handstand." But our compound was designed to be completely repulsive," Clax protested, his voice modulator hitting notes that would make a dog howl. "Show me the chemical analysis again." Dr. Zixix projected a complex molecular diagram into the center of the room. According to our latest findings, the human digestive system isn't just tolerating our compound, it's metabolizing it more efficiently than their standard wine. The crystalline structure appears to be acting as a sort of flavor enhancer. That's not even the worst part, junior observer Nix189 chimed in, her structure practically vibrating with anxiety. I've been monitoring their medical records. Not only are they not getting sick, but some humans are claiming it helps with their hangovers. The room fell into shocked silence, broken only by the sound of High Counselor Prism 001's crystals clinking together in distress. Perhaps, Prism 001 suggested desperately, we should increase the concentration. Dr. Zixix's response was interrupted by an incoming alert. Her crystals paled to an almost transparent state as she read it. Oh no! Oh no, no, no! What is it? Clax demanded. Someone just ordered a crystalline wine espresso. They're mixing our treated wine with something called coffee. The surveillance feed switched to a trendy Earth cafe where a barista was cheerfully combining their carefully engineered compound with what appeared to be pure liquid darkness. Quick, Clax ordered. What's the toxicity level of this coffee? Dr. Zixix ran the analysis, then ran it again, hoping for a different result. According to our instruments, the caffeine content in their coffee is more potent than our entire compound. They drink this every morning. The feed showed a human casually drinking the unholy mixture while typing on a laptop. They could hear her say. This crystalline wine coffee really helps with the Monday morning meetings. Monday morning, Prism 001's voice reached a frequency that made everyone's crystals sympathetically vibrate. They're drinking this before their primary productivity cycle even begins. Another alert pinged. Nix, who had been monitoring social media, made a sound like breaking glass. It's trending on something called TikTok. Humans are now mixing the treated wine with something called Red Bull and calling it cosmic juice. Dr. Zixix quickly pulled up the chemical composition of Red Bull and promptly short-circuited 3 of her analysis crystals. How are they still functioning? The combined stimulant levels should have them vibrating through dimensions. The surveillance feed now showed a college student chugging this new combination while their friends chanted, "Cosmic juice! Cosmic juice!" That's it, Clax declared, his structure drooping in defeat. Call the High Council. We need to admit that we may have slightly, catastrophically, underestimated human biological resilience. Wait, Nix interrupted, her crystals suddenly brightening. You haven't heard the worst part yet. The humans have noticed that the treated wine has a slight bioluminescent effect under blacklight. They're organizing something called a cosmic wine rave. The room erupted in chaos. Prism 001 was making a noise that sounded like a chandelier having a nervous breakdown. Dr. Zixix had gone into emergency hibernation mode, and somewhere in the background they could hear the distinct sound of human EDM music starting to play, accompanied by the cheerful clinks of crystal wine glasses. Well, Clack said, watching a human do a backflip while holding a glowing glass of their treated wine, at least it can't get any worse. That's when Nix received one final alert. The International Wine and Spirit Competition just awarded our crystalline vintage their highest honor. They're calling it the greatest innovation in wine since fermentation. The entire observation center went dark as every Vexarian simultaneously dimmed their crystals in shame. In the silence, they could hear the distant sound of humans toasting to their accidental success. Somewhere in the universe, several cosmic entities were passing around a bottle of crystalline wine and having a good laugh at the Vexarians' expense. The United Nations Security Council wasn't used to emergency meetings being quite this festive. Representatives from various nations sat around the imposing circular table, each with a glass of mysteriously shimmering wine in front of them. So, the French representative began, swirling his glass with expert precision. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Aliens tried to poison our wine supply? Correct, replied Dr. Rodriguez, head of the newly formed Extraterrestrial Beverage Analysis Department. Our satellites caught their ships leaving several major vineyards. Analysis of the wine showed clear signs of non-terrestrial chemical compounds. The British representative took a thoughtful sip. And they managed to contaminate approximately how much of the global supply? About 40% of all premium vintages, Dr. Rodriguez answered, checking his tablet. They were quite thorough. Fascinating, the Italian representative mused, holding her glass up to the light. And this shimmer effect, it's completely safe. Not only is it safe, Dr. Rodriguez grinned, but our tests show it actually reduces hangover symptoms by 60%. Something about the crystalline structure helps metabolize the alcohol more efficiently. The room burst into appreciative murmurs and the clinking of glasses. The public response has been unexpected, the American representative chuckled, pulling up some market data on the main screen. Wine sales have increased by 300% globally. We've had to create a new classification system just for these enhanced vintages. Meanwhile, at the prestigious Wine and Spirit Education Trust in London, Master of Wine Patricia Thompson was leading a special tasting session. Notice the unique mouthfeel, she instructed her class. The crystalline structure adds what I can only describe as a fourth dimension to the traditional wine tasting experience. The aliens clearly understood terroir better than they intended. One student raised his hand. But shouldn't we be concerned about the fact that it was meant to be poison? Patricia laughed, the sound echoing off her crystal wine glass. My dear boy, humans have been turning poisons into pleasures since we discovered fermentation. Speaking of which, wait until you try the new crystalline absinthe. Across the globe, social media was having a field day. #alien wine was trending worldwide, with millions sharing their experiences. At Wine Influencer, just tried the new crystalline Chateau Lafite. The aliens really understood the assignment. #blessed #alien wine. At Party People, cosmic wine raves are now a thing. The blacklight effect is insane. #alien wine #rave life. At Wine Mum, my book club just got 500% more interesting. Thanks, aliens. #alien wine #mum life. In Silicon Valley, several startups had already begun developing apps to track and trade crystalline vintages. One company, called Space Grapes, had reached unicorn status within a week of launching. The high-end restaurant scene had evolved practically overnight. Michelin-starred establishments were now offering specialized, extraterrestrial tasting menus paired exclusively with contaminated wines. One particularly innovative chef had created a dessert that actually levitated when paired with the crystalline champagne. Gordon Ramsay had released a viral video where he blind tested the alien wine. His reaction, finally some good fucking space poison, had become an instant meme. At NASA headquarters, a team of scientists was studying the crystalline compound with barely contained amusement. Should we tell the aliens that this compound is chemically similar to the natural minerals we already add to some health drinks? One researcher asked. Nah, his colleague replied, sipping from a glass of glowing Merlot. Let them stew in their failure a bit longer. Besides, my retirement portfolio is loving the wine industry boom. The final nail in the coffin of the aliens' plan came when Time magazine published their cover story. How Extraterrestrial Intervention Made Wine Better, a story of unintended consequences. The article included an interview with renowned wine critic Robert Parker, who had come out of retirement specifically to rate the new vintages. His unprecedented 101-point score for a crystalline Bordeaux, along with the note literally out of this world, had sent the wine world into a frenzy. Even the budget wine market was thriving. Boxes of crystalline wine were flying off shelves, marketed under names like Area 51 Red Blend and Close Encounters of the Wine Kind. As humans continued to not only survive but enthusiastically embrace their poisoned wine, one thing became abundantly clear. Any alien species planning to attack humanity through their beverages would need to seriously reconsider their strategy. After all, this was a species that had looked at coffee, a bean that literally evolved to be toxic to insects, and decided to start their day with it. The grand chamber of the Vexarian High Council had never looked less grand. The usually sparkling crystalline beings were all dimmed to a dull glow of embarrassment, their hovering pods drooping slightly as they watched the incoming transmission from Earth. Greetings, Vexarian High Council, the UN Secretary-General began, somehow managing to keep a straight face. We trust you've been following the tremendous success of your contribution to our wine industry. High Councillor Prism 001's crystals made a sound like a chandelier sighing. We admit to our attempted intervention and accept full responsibility for our miscalculation. Miscalculation? Chief Observer Clax 427 muttered from his corner. That's like calling a supernova a slight temperature increase. His crystals had been stuck in a permanent shade of embarrassed purple for weeks. In the spirit of intergalactic cooperation, the Secretary-General continued, we would like to invite your ambassador to Earth for a proper cultural exchange. Perhaps we could help you understand our appreciation for fermented beverages. Dr. Zixix, watching from her lab, made a noise like breaking glass. They want to teach us about wine after we tried to poison it. These humans are either incredibly forgiving or have an absolutely twisted sense of humor. Probably both, Nix 189 chimed in, still secretly nursing a taste for their failed compound. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Zenith 555, chosen for their supposedly high tolerance to exotic substances, arrived at a small vineyard in the Champagne region of France. Their crystalline forms sparkled nervously in the afternoon sun. Welcome to Earth, the French Minister of Agriculture greeted them, standing next to an elegantly set table laden with wine bottles. We thought we'd start with something light, perhaps a nice rosé. The assembled human diplomats watched with barely concealed amusement as the ambassador's translation crystal processed the word light in relation to alcohol content. I assure you, Zenith began, their voice modulator quavering slightly, that my structure has been reinforced to handle your most potent. 1 sip later, Zenith's crystals were refracting light in patterns that would have made a disco ball jealous. This is, their universal translator struggled to find the right words. I can taste the sunlight? And why is everything so funny suddenly? That's just the first glass, someone muttered, failing to hide their grin. By the third sip, Ambassador Zenith was trying to teach the humans traditional Vexarian crystal resonance songs, which sounded remarkably similar to Earth's wind chimes in a hurricane. You know what? Zenith announced, their crystals now pulsing in rainbow patterns. We should totally export this to the Galactic Federation. Can you imagine the Zelaxians trying this? They don't even have mouths. The human diplomats exchanged glances. They hadn't even brought out the good stuff yet. Perhaps, the French minister suggested diplomatically, we should wait before introducing the concept of wine tastings to the broader galactic community. Back in the Vexarian observation pod, Clax and Nix watched the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. Should we inform the High Council that their ambassador is currently trying to initiate what appears to be a conga line? Nix asked. Let's wait, Clax replied, his crystals flickering with what might have been amusement. I want to see what happens when they bring out the champagne. As if on cue, the distinctive pop of a champagne cork echoed through their surveillance feed. Ambassador Zenith's startled jump nearly broke their gravitational stabilizer. By the Great Nebula, Zenith exclaimed, it's aggressive and delicious. The final report to the Vexarian High Council was surprisingly brief. Operation Wine Liberation Final Assessment. 1. Attempt to save humans from wine failed. 2. Attempt to make wine unpalatable failed spectacularly. 3. Attempt to maintain dignity in face of failure, currently failing as Ambassador Zenith teaches humans Vexarian party songs. 4. Unexpected outcomes, humans now want to establish regular wine trade routes with Vexarian space. 5. Additional note, request immediate research into human tolerance levels for all substances. 6. Final recommendation, never try to outdrink a species that looks at molecular toxins and thinks this would go great with cheese. As the humans and their increasingly sparkly alien guests continued their cultural exchange, one truth became crystal clear. In the great galactic community, humanity would always be those weird neighbors who could turn anything, even an attempted poisoning, into a party. And somewhere in the universe, in a very exclusive cosmic bar, several celestial beings were raising their glasses to humanity's unique ability to turn alien assassination attempts into profitable business ventures. To the humans, they toasted, may we never underestimate their ability to have fun with potentially lethal substances. Ambassador Zenith, meanwhile, had just discovered the concept of wine ice cream, and the resulting crystal resonance frequency could be heard all the way to Alpha Centauri.